Hello, this is another extraordinary episode of Sekmadienio Variete, and today I'll be speaking with a journalist, Dominik Wilczewski, who constantly writes for Przegląd Bałtycki and some other places. And as you know, there were events in Poland, in particular a constitutional tribunal, which is like a Supreme Court of Poland, has ruled a total ban on abortion. And Dominik has recently started writing in Lithuanian in order to inform people of what is happening in Poland, and I've decided that maybe we should have a talk. So welcome, Dominik.
Hello.
So let's start with the prehistory. So. First of all, who had this idea of packing the constitutional courts? Was it a long-time affair? And how does this increase in number and changes to the to Polish Constitutional Tribunal? It's a constitutional tribunal, yes?
Yes.
How does it affect this decision that has happened last week?
Yes, the reason of the protests that are going on in Poland these days is the verdict of the Constitutional Tribunal from the made on October 22nd. And to understand what is the problem with the Constitutional Tribunal, we have to go back to 2015. Actually, we should even go back even further, because I need to stress that Constitutional Tribunal in Poland, so it is a court which was established to check if the acts of law are constitutional. So. It's an institution like in Lithuania is the Constitutional Court. We call it Constitutional Tribunal. It was late 80s, even during the communist time in Poland. It was a part of legislative reforms made by the government of General Wojciech Jaruzelski, this institution was always some doubts about its impartial. Is it independent politically? Is it impartial? Because the judges of the Constitutional Tribunal, there are 15 judges. They are appointed by Polish Parliament. So they are appointed by a political majority, parliamentary majority. They should have legal experience and legal education, but still they need political support. So all the time there were accusations that this fully politically independent, and there were situations that, for example, when the right wing was in the majority in the parliament, they packed the Constitutional Tribunal with their appointees, and the judges were appointed for 9 years without the possibility of re-election. So when the left wing came to power and some of the acts of law were passed to the tribunal for checking if they are constitutional, so the tribunal made the decision not in favor, so made the decision that some acts were unconstitutional, and there were and in reverse, of course, and there were always accusations that it's not a really independent decision but politically motivated. Actually, one of this decision in 1997, there was a verdict of Constitutional Tribunal exactly about the abortion rights, but maybe there will be also another occasion to talk about the history of the abortion rights in Poland. But we're in 2015, and we have 5 judges whose term is going to an end in November and December. And there is and also the term of Sejm, of the parliament, is finishing in autumn, because there are elections in October 2015. And in this parliament, there was a majority of the Liberal Party, Center Party, called Civic Platform, which is now in opposition, and their junior coalition partner, Polish Peasants Party. And in order to, as it was presented by the authors of this novelizations, in order to secure the continuation of the tribunal, so passed a new law on Constitutional Tribunal, allowing this this parliament to appoint 5 new judges. So we can say that it was a bit a similar situation that we are having now with appointing a new Supreme Judge in the United States after the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So it's an election year, and whether it is legitimate to appoint new judges before the elections or after the elections, when there is a new majority. So the elections, they passed this law. The same. It was just one of the last sittings of the outgoing Sejm, when they appointed 5 new judges. But the Civic Platform lost. They lost the election, and Law and Justice Party, the conservative Law and Justice Party, came to power, and they argued that this novelization is unconstitutional. It was made for political purposes, to pack the court with the politically loyal judges. So they made their own novelization, and they passed. They made the same with Law and Justice majority. They decided that the appointing of these 5 new judges was a breach of law, and they cannot be judges. The president, also from Law and Justice, Andrzej Duda, he decided that he will not take the oath from these five new judges. And Law and Justice, then the Law and Justice majority, they appointed their own 5 new judges. And it started the constitution, which lasted for a long time. And then the parliamentary majority also implemented several new novelizations of the law on the Constitutional Tribunal, changing the procedure of nominating the judges, changing the internal procedures within the Constitutional Tribunal. So many legal experts in Poland are now saying that the Constitutional Tribunal, under these new laws, almost completely lost its political independence, and that all of the judges are, not mentioning the one judge that was remaining judge that was still appointed by not the previous Sejm, but the one before, that the majority of the judges are simply political appointees.
Okay, so we have sort of political background and power games which were played at this sort of constitutional tribunal level. So the second question, of course, has to be, Poland has, even until this decision, it had one of the strictest abortion laws in Europe. It was only Malta, Ireland, even Ireland has recently changed its law on abortion via referendum, and Poland. These were, I believe, three of the most countries with the most strictest legislation in limiting abortion or banning abortion. So when Poland started, as far as I know, in Eastern Bloc, there were countries which had limitations on abortion law, like Romania, if I remember correctly, and in some cases these were related to the losses incurred by the population during the World War II, sort of a natalist policy in increasing population and covering those losses. So when did Poland, first of all, when did Poland have a right to abortion? Did at any point in its history prior to 1990, it had a legal right? Well, people in Poland had a legal right to abortion, and when these changes occurred, because this is the context where countries like Lithuania and Poland will differ significantly.
Yes, as far as I know, the possibility of legal abortion in Lithuania is, I would say, it's it comes from the Soviet past. So it was allowed in the Soviet Union, and it hasn't been changed after regaining independence. Situation in Poland was different. Abortion was banned until period. It was or criminalized until 1932. Then it was allowed in for medical reasons and in the situation where the pregnancy was a result of a criminal act, so like incest or a rape. In the end of the independent Poland before the Second World War, the abortion was legal. Then it was made after the war. It was during the Stalinist period. It was again illegal. But then, after the Khrushchev's thaw, the abortion rights, the law on abortion was being liberalized, and it was in the 60s and in the 70s it was legal in some specific cases. I would also like as maybe as a kind of interesting informations that the abortion in the 60s and 70s, it was legal on demand. So even some women from other European countries where the abortion rights were more strict, like Sweden, they were coming to Poland to do this do abortion. But then we have the collapse of the communist system in Poland, and the Solidarity movement, or the political parties that emerged from the Solidarity movement, they came to power, and there were mostly right-wing or center-right political parties, supported also by the Catholic Church. So abortion came on the agenda, and the first democratically elected Sejm with the term between 1991 and 1993, it was dominated by center-right, center-right, and right-wing parties. The two only left-wing parties that were marginalized in that Sejm or in the opposition, there were the bigger one was the Alliance of Democratic Left, the post-communist party, and the smaller party, Labor Union, which was made, it was established by the socialists from the Solidarity movement. So those were only two parties that were opposing restrictions on abortion rights. Other parties were either supporting complete ban, total ban on abortion, or some center-right parties, center parties, they were agreeing on allowing abortion in some particular cases. Also, there was a Liberal Democratic Party that also was in favor of allowing abortion. What is interesting that this Liberal Democratic Party later the civic platform emerged from this party, and Donald Tusk, the previous Prime Minister of Poland from civic platform, he was one of the politicians of the Liberal Democratic Party, and he was voting in favor of allowing abortion. So currently in Polish political discourse, there is a term used, abortion compromise, that the current abortion law made in 1993 is a result of a compromise. But it was not a compromise between the left and the right. It was a compromise between the center, liberals, and the right wing. So the result of this compromise was the law on abortion, which allowed abortion in three particular cases. First is when the pregnancy may cause a threat to the women's life. Second is the particular one which is now discussed, the right to abortion, where if there is unrepairable damage of the fetus. And the third one is when the pregnancy is the result of the criminal act. So, for example, rape. Later, in 1993, after the passing of this law, the Alliance of Democratic Left, they came to power, they had the majority, and in 1996, they tried to change the law, allowing also abortion in the situation of mothers of women's hardship. So when the difficult social living conditions, because of the difficult social living conditions, also women could have abortion. But this novelization was protested in the Constitutional Tribunal, which was then packed by the judges appointed by the previous parliament. And this Constitutional Tribunal made the judgment that this novelization is unconstitutional. So we have gone back to the abortion compromise, which was until last week, it was that was the law that it was passed in 1993. It remained until last week, until the decision of the Constitutional Tribunal.
So currently there are very active protests, and at this moment Lithuania is most probably the most calm country in this region, considering that we have actually very similar visuals in Warsaw. I think you have shared a picture with like lots of police trucks in the center of Warsaw, and considering that we have a sort of a large-scale civil unrest in Belarus. So who organizes these protests? Who are the participants, and are these protests supported by the wider, I don't know, majority, or were there any sociological data on the support for these protests? And as far as I've seen, there was a specific reaction by the Catholic Church of Poland towards these protests and towards this abortion ban. So could you elaborate on the resistance towards this bill, towards this decision? I'm sorry.
Well, these protests are they have their own dynamics. So it's at this point it's not that easy to make clear conclusions. Who are the leaders? Who are the participants? Because it changes. But for sure, they started already the same day that the Constitutional Tribunal made its decision, and people started gathering in Warsaw, Żoliborz district, which is known for that the leader of the Law and Justice Party, Jarosław Kaczyński, who is considered to be an informal leader of Poland. He is living there, and people started gathering near to his house. The street was completely blocked by the police, many police vehicles, and a lot of riot police concentrated there to prevent people from coming closer to Jarosław Kaczyński's house. But this protest then gradually started to attract more and more attention of different people. Of course, these protests are mostly organized by women, and women are the participants. Talking about organizers, there is no clear leadership. The leadership or the organized are, I would say, atomized. In different cities, different towns, there are different people involved in the organization. There is no central organization or a central leadership. Of course, there is some circle of people that that I think they are trying to pretend that they are the central leadership of this movement. We can at this point probably we can say about already that we have a social movement, not only just protest but social movement in terms of political theory. And there is an organization which is called the All National, All Polish Women's, which already it has organized previous women's protest before, but because in last 4 years there were other proposals, or the ruling majority tried to in other ways tried to change the abortion law. So there were other protests organized before, but they didn't attract so much attention, except one protest in 2016, which was called if I remember correctly, it was called Black Monday because it was in Monday, and it gathered thousands of women dressed in black to protest against the changes in the abortion law.
There were even support for this protest in Lithuania. I remember that,
yes.
that there were sort of near embassy that there was a support action from Lithuanian sort of feminist movement, etc.
Yes, and there is a leader of the organization, Polish Women's Strike, Marta Lempart. She is a lawyer and an entrepreneur from Wrocław, and she's also outed lesbian. and she organized several protests in favor of women's rights, mostly women's rights. Also, there was last year there was a protest about against the restrictions on the sexual education. It was also organized partially by this organization. But we are seeing now that there are different currents within the movement. There is, for example, a strong, I would say, strong movement within the movement that is also in favor of securing the LGBT people rights, not only women rights, but LGBT people. There is a strong demand on the real secularization of the state, real separation of the church and the state, against the teaching religion in schools, against this informal alliance of the state and the church. For example, on last Sunday, in some of the churches, some of the protesters tried to organize this protest also within the churches during the Sunday masses, and also there were examples that some slogans were sprayed on the walls of the churches, and so this part of the protest. This is the part of the protest probably that mostly enraged the ruling party and enraged the conservatives, Catholic conservatives in Poland, because they are now presenting this protest as not a protest against abortion restriction, but they are presenting it as an attack on the church. Of course, there are different postulates or different proposals made by the protesters. Some of the slogans that they are using or that they are shouting, some of them are, we can say that they're vulgar, but it is the poetry of the protest, I would call it like this. But yes, I don't know if I may use vulgar words in this.
You can. I think we can agree that you're allowed to.
So the one of the widest mostly used slogan is wypierdalać, which is called fuck off. Simply fuck off, and it can be aimed at Kaczynski, at the ruling party, at the boomers, at the Catholic Church. The other one is jebać PiS, so fuck peace, so fuck the ruling party. And this causes some disappointment from some of the not only conservative but also some liberal center public intellectuals, journalists, commentators who are disappointed that this protest is not calm, that this protest use obscenic words, that this protest, that there are some examples of violence in this protest. So of course there is some level of criticism, not only from the conservatives, but also from some liberals, and of course we can say that this protest is somehow apolitical because it's not organized by political parties. But some politicians are also involved in protesting. Mostly politicians from left-wing parties, like there is in the parliament we have the coalition of different left-wing parties. The coalition is simply called the left, and mostly female members of parliament are taking part in the protest, and also they are. Advocating the ideas of the protest in the parliament, But of course, there is the civic platform, which is under the name of Civic Coalition, which is the main political force of the opposition, which is not that directly supporting the protests. There are different opinions within the party because this party is partially liberal, partially also quite conservative. When they were in power for 8 years, they didn't, for example, pass any law to make the abortion rights less strict. Also, they were not interested in law on allowing the same-sex partnerships. So by some part of the protesters, the civic platform is seen as false.
Too conservative.
Yes.
And this is
false supporter.
Yeah, and this is I have noticed that if one would observe the Polish political scene, one might have this false impression that the PR or civic platform, as if they are a liberal party. They are not, and that's the point, that they are part of the European People's Party. So
yes.
They are just regular conservatives, while
yes.
Law and order is Prawo i Sprawiedliwość is
law and justice.
Law and justice. Yeah, because we have a similar. We used to have a similar party with a similar name, and they are the part of ECR, European Conservatives and Reformers. So let's take a look at consequences. I have seen some articles, even from relatively conservative publications. Rzeczpospolita is, as far as I understand, a mainstream conservative newspaper and website, and they are at this moment full of criticism at this decision. And does this change anything to the political system that was built by peace? Do you believe that it can create a backlash and some sort of consolidation of, I don't know, liberal, left-wing, or maybe even moderate conservative forces, and be a trigger to some changes in Poland? And I've seen an article, I can't remember the person who wrote it, that this was basically the big mistake by Kaczynski and his faction, that it might destroy this sort of big coalition that he has built. Do you agree with this assessment, or do you have sort of other views?
Well, the main factor is that the next elections, parliamentary election, is going to be only in 2023. So we have still 3 years of 3 years without any election. So it's at this point it's difficult to predict what will happen in 3 years, if there will be any catastrophe of law and justice, if they lose the people's support. I have seen a recent opinion poll made already after the Constitutional Tribunal verdict, which shows the loss of support for law and justice, because during the election, in 2019, they had the support of more than 40% of voters, but in this opinion poll, it is only 26% of the people who took part in the opinion poll, while the civic platform is supported by 23%. And we see in this opinion poll that there is a third force that is getting attention, attracting popular support. It's the non-parliamentary movement called Poland 2050, which is led by Szymon Hołownia, he was a candidate in the presidential election. He's a journalist, TV presenter. Usually he's associated with the so-called Open Church because he's like a liberal Catholic. He once even was in a novitiate. I don't know the precise English term, but he was trying to become a Dominican monk, but he resigned then. But now he's a lay Catholic. Closely associated with Catholic circles, but not with the conservative part of the church, but the more open. But still, like as a Catholic, Szymon Hołownia advocates for that he's against liberalization of abortion rights. But he's also somehow reacted to the protest that he understand the reason why this protest emerged, but he doesn't agree with some of the tools that the protesters use. Like he doesn't agree with attacking the churches. But as it can be seen from the opinion polls, he is gaining some attention and popular support. In the same opinion poll, people were asked about the decision of the Constitutional Tribunal and about the protest. So I think more than 70 or even as much as 80% of the people asked in the opinion poll are critical of the Constitutional Tribunal verdict. But talking about support to the protest, the support to the protest is smaller. There are more than 54, if I remember correctly, 54% support the protest, while 40-something are not supportive of the protest. So we already we can see that the society is somehow divided over the protest. It is not so much divided in criticism of the verdict of Constitutional Tribunal, but it's more polarized talking about the protest. So there is I think there is a large part of the society which is not does not see this protest as the way the protests are held. They don't see it as justified. And also talking about the protests, of course, there is a factor of pandemic. So probably there are people who are not supportive of the protest because they know that there is pandemic and there should be no protest, no public gatherings in these circumstances.
However, I have to say that in post-Soviet area, generally protesters are not liked. In Lithuania, whenever you have a protest, however numerous or well attended it is, you have this constant criticism of any protest because people are well, why are these people making a fuss? So there is this general in I don't know, post-Soviet and post-Soviet domination area societies against, I don't know, public participation in politics or mass participation in politics. This sort of attempts to maybe tamper down people's, I don't know, emotions or anger. But however, do you believe that there will be a backlash in terms of consolidation against this? Because it, okay, okay, I might be incorrect here, but sometimes, you know, the saying, the straw that broke the camel's back, basically the last I don't know, centimeter, which basically an overreach by PiS regime, and in that sense that okay, let me ask it this question in a slightly different way. Do you believe that that after these sort of total bans on abortion, in reality it is almost a total ban, what will be the support for the ruling coalition, ruling party, within the sort of demographic of women? Because I do understand that a lot of people in Poland are relatively conservative, especially outside of big towns, outside of Warsaw or big Western cities. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Okay, and I have to add another thing. I was in Poland during the last election. You had there. I think it was last year, last autumn, I believe. Mm-hmm. And from what I've seen, the current ruling party, they did not. They created a narrative of them being sort of technocrats. To be honest, they sort of struck me as trying to play, I don't know, even certain neoliberal vibes, and they do not even attempt in public to play this sort of a conservative, very Catholic game in its public relations. Do you believe that that after these changes, because well, large demographics of society will be looking for a way out of this situation? Do you believe that that there will be a reconsolidation of political forces and maybe the changes in narratives which will bring the end of this regime and maybe some create some openings in public discourse for viable alternatives?
Well, talking about law and justice, I can say that they are like this Slavic god that had 4 faces, and they have different faces for different parts of the electorate. They have the face of like Zbigniew Ziobro, the Prosecutor General and the Minister of Justice, who is very conservative, against the Istanbul Convention, in favor of restriction abortion and so on, and in favor of like this strong grip on society and strong grip on different protesting groups. On the other hand, they have the technocratic face of Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, who was for many years, he was we can compare him with Gitanas Nausėda. He was for many years, he was working for a big bank, and he was like in favor of laissez-faire policies of cheap state, let's say it. And now he's prime minister of a government that is responsible for implementing the different public transfers to the society, like the well-known 500 zlotys for each child. So it's now we have knowing that the leader of the party, Jarosław Kaczyński, is over 70, and as we have seen from last days, especially from his statement published on the social media of the ruling party, when he said that we are seeing an attack on the Polish nation, attack on Poland, attack on the church, and he said that the supporters of the party should gather around churches to protect them from the attacks. We can I've at the beginning of our discussion I mentioned General Wojciech Jaruzelski, who was a communist dictator in the 80s. And some people who have seen this Kaczyński's statement, they compare it with Jaruzelski's announcement of martial law in Poland in 1981. So there are some commentators, even conservative commentators, even some commentators somehow supportive of the law and justice. They already say that Kaczyński, who was previously for many years, he was described as a genius strategist who can project some movements in advance, that he lost or is losing contact with reality, that he's almost living in his own, created by himself, his own world. And it's a question how the different factions within the law and justice will react to what is happening. And that probably an internal fight for the leadership has already started. And we have Mateusz Morawiecki, who is seen as lately he was seen as a kind of successor candidate. But his position within the party is not so much strong, because for many years he was not a member of the party, and he was like only when he became a deputy prime minister for the economical responsible for economic affairs. Only then he became a member of the party, and he was promoted to the position of the deputy leader by Kaczyński. But he's not. There is not so much of trust within the party rank and file members towards Morawiecki. But we have also other successor candidates. Joachim Brudziński, who is now in the European Parliament. Also, Zbigniew Ziobro has his own political ambitions. Also, there is this junior small party which is attached to law and justice, called Porozumienie, agreement, which is led by Jarosław Gowin, also like a old style, old school Kraków conservative, who also he has some ambitions. So there is a no. Of course, we have this is maybe a sensation, but we also have a president who was for almost for a whole weekend after almost all week after the Constitutional Tribunal judgment, he was completely silent.
Actually, we have a very similar situation in Lithuania, where president is almost always silent. So someone is learning from someone, I believe.
Yes, and even one of his ministers, Andrzej Duda's, the president of Poland, one of his ministers said that, well, because he is infected with the coronavirus, he is isolated. He is in isolated place, and it's impossible to connect.
Basically, he is locked in a cave without any without internet and any mobile networks. Listen, okay, just last. I think we should go to the conclusion, and I have just maybe two last questions. The first of which is, what is the general situation, and this is not only from these events, but what is the general situation with the secularization of a society in Poland? Because in these cases, the long-term trends are actually more important than short-term events. Do you believe that Polish society has reached the level where this, I don't know, reaction to women's right to choose will be stopped and maybe will there be a backlash against these decisions, or do you believe that the Catholic Church, the traditional Catholic conservatives, will be able to hold this out for another, I don't know, decade or so? What is this general situation with the secularization of society and religiosity in Poland?
Of course, we have to have in mind the processes that are going within the Catholic Church in general, and the reforms that are tried to be implemented by the Pope Francis. But what we are maybe we are seeing now something like the quiet revolution or Révolution tranquille, which happened in Quebec in the 50s and 60s, where the overwhelmed Catholic society became, within 2 decades, became completely secular. Because the situation is similar, because also like Quebec, that was separated from the continental France, didn't have French Revolution, didn't have the secularization processes that happened in France. Also, in Poland, there were no such processes, and the Catholic Church remained a really strong institution. Also because of its position during the communist regime, when it was a last refuge, I would say, for many dissidents, also some non-religious dissidents who somehow, mostly during the Solidarity period, they somehow became associated or attached to the church. And no real separation of the church and the state happened after 1989. In securing its influence on political life. It can be, of course, there could be different opinions on that, but it's a fact that it remained influent institution. Of course, there is another issue which became in last years became really big issue. It's the problem of child abuses in the Catholic Church. Like, it is a problem in general, worldwide problem of the Catholic Church, but also in Poland. It hasn't been so much discussed in the 90s and later, but the last 5 years there are real huge scandals. There was like a documentary film about the child abuses in the Catholic Church made by Tomasz Sekielski and Marek Sekielski brothers. This film was hugely popular, and I can say it's like my personal opinion, that we haven't seen a real response from the Catholic Church hierarchy towards this scandal. So it also causes the loss of support in popular support and popular trust towards the church. Just from the very recent days, after the Constitutional Tribunal verdict, of course, the conservative part of the society and the conservative part of the Catholic community in Poland, they constantly repeat this narrative that there is an attack on the church, and attack on the church is an attack on Poland. But there are some parts of this open church, open Catholics, or the Catholic left, let's say, like There are people who are like they call themselves Catholic left. Somehow they can be named as supporters of the theology of liberation. So they are critical of what is going on within the Catholic Church. They are critical that the bishops are not. They do not want changes. That they are not. They cannot recognize what is going within the society. That this structure, hierarchic structure of the Catholic Church is obsolete. That it's responsive of cannot respond to the changes that the 21st century brought. That the bishops, they don't understand the social media. They don't understand the young people, because young people are the large part of the protests are young people. These young people, for them, the figure of John Paul II, who is like a all-national Polish symbol, revered and respected by everyone, for these young people, Pope John Paul II is a part of history, or even a prehistory. It's like a figure from an ancient past. And these young people, they learn now that also John Paul II, either he was involved in putting the pedophile scandals under the carpet, or he knew, but he didn't do. He did nothing to solve this problem. So for these young people, John Paul II is not an authority anymore.
He's not a revered figure. He's just someone who has he's no longer a hero without any blemish or any any stains. And okay, final question will be a pretty general one, but from what I've seen from Polish political scene, is that the current ruling party is basically a very postmodern party in one sense, in the sense that they keep their power by constantly creating populist outrage. And I remember when I was in Warsaw, and I was actually struck by the entire cross in front of the president's palace, and there was this sort of constant, highly emotionally charged events. And there's this documentarist Adam Curtis who has basically explored the position of one of the Putin's PR people, Surkov, who basically was postmodernist theater critic, and he created this idea that you can take ideas from modern arts and from these sort of highly emotionally charged performances, and you can transfer them into politics. And it has always struck me that Law and Justice constantly looked for and found sources for populist outrage to remain in power. Do you believe that there are still places to look for this populist outrage? Why I am asking? Because you have stressed that this technocratic side of the party is basically, well, taken over at this moment. And from what I've seen in previous election campaign, they have tried to portray themselves as competent administrators and sort of professionals. And we had very similar situation in 2016 in Lithuania. And are there any, in your opinion, are there any further sources for them to look for populist outrage? Because if they will not find it, they are in many ways toast, because they will have constant support from conservative Catholics, and there will be less and less of them within each and every election cycle. Or maybe I am incorrect. Maybe you can criticize this position.
Well, from what is happening last days, there can be a conclusion drawn, but of course it may be false, because maybe there are some other factors we still don't recognize them. But at this point, I think, and many commentators say that the ruling party is coming like close to the wall. There is no place to move for them. All the time Kaczynski was playing on. They used this polarization of society, and he tended to make the society even more polarized, using different subjects of different narratives, and bringing some subjects to the political discourse, like the LGBT issue, like the abortion. Earlier it was lustration of the communist cooperators, different issues to make the society enraged and make the society even more polarized, in order to have political gains, and in order also to manage the internal
dynamics
in the party.
Of the coalition. Yeah.
Yes, and but now what is still, but not, we have seen that especially the decisions that they made during the pandemic, that they enraged the entrepreneurs. Earlier, before the Constitutional Tribunal verdict, we have the novelization of law concerning protection of animals that enraged a large part of the farmers. So farmers who are usually it was a stronghold of support of law and justice, and now we see that they are losing support among these groups. What has remained for them to use? I'm afraid that sooner or later they might use the issue of leaving the European Union.
Yeah, that is actually the logical conclusion of where they are going, but I believe it will be the end, in the sense that the support for the EU in Poland is among the highest.
Yes, and people realized that it was Poland benefited from being a member of European Union. That it could be like we say in Poland, it could be like this nail to the coffin of law and justice. But of course, we have to consider other factors, international factors, like we are going to have an election in the United States, and how the Biden administration will react to what is happening in Poland, and also how the pandemic will develop.
Okay, so as far as I understood, the bells tolled. You have a church nearby, because you had sort of a bell sound near you.
It's a clock.
Okay, clock. Okay. I thought that the church was basically calling us to finish this interview. So thank you for your time, Dominik, and it was a pleasure to talk to you. And I do hope that the entire situation will at least resolve itself in a civilized and matter. And I have this very interesting relation towards Poland. I sort of like visiting there, and I like the people, and I believe that Polish people can do a lot better than they are giving now by their current regime.
Well, I hope so. It will resolve in a civilized manner. I hope the further radicalization will stop somehow. I've seen that the protest that started as a radical, I think it's becoming more moderate, but no one knows what will happen in the upcoming days because, what I've seen from the statements of the different politicians of the ruling party, they are not helping in resolving this issue in a civilized manner. When I hear that the head prosecutor is threatening organizers with 12 years of prison sentence, then it's not a good.
This is not de-escalation. So
right.
Thank you very much, Dominik, and
thank you for having me.
And I believe if there will ever be anything of interest, I will try to invite you again.
Thank you very much. I'm at your service.
Okay.